Welcome in 5 minutes with Sean, maybe 10. It's going to be more than 10 today because it's sit down edition day. Y'all know how much I love talking with other people on this show about what matters to them. A couple of years ago, we kind of changed the way people do interviews, at least the way we do them. And we allow our guests to pick the topic. We allow our guests to drive the discussion. We do that for two reasons. One, creating content is hard. So selfishly, I like it when other people do it. So, because I do a lot of it. And two, I like to get other people's perspectives. I use this show on a weekly basis to sit on my own stump. And those who watch know what I have to say, but the voices of other people are more powerful. So today, I bring you someone who we were just talking about when we had met almost a decade ago on Fremont Street in Las Vegas at a conference. The owner of AutoMax, Joe Locker. Joe, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm wonderful. And thank you so much for making the time. I know we've had to come together on some schedules here.
It has been a journey. There's been some rescheduling. Yeah. Well, and I told you, it's funny, the last reschedule was for my own mental health. I was like, hey, I can sit here and plow through this, Sean, but I need a mental health day, so I'm not going to do this.
When I read your text, it was funny because I've had other people on the show who have wanted to discuss mental health. And I'm very proud, by the way, if I will say, I'm very proud the show has become a place for that. It makes me very happy to know that we've opened up a space where people feel comfortable to call us, to be on our show, to talk about their mental health. So I'm proud of that. But it's interesting because you decided not to push through it. And I had another edition where we did push through it. And I got to say, it was everyone probably should have taken a break.
Yeah, and it's tough. I was back and forth on it, right? Because if you can see it front and center, and hey, and this is what it looks like when someone's struggling. But I think when you're locked into that survival mode, it's like, what are you really going to accomplish? Like, I don't think anyone benefits a whole hell of a lot from you and I sitting here and having, an impromptu therapy session. So I didn't really think it was going to add value, but
you might
maybe could have.
I might benefit a little bit, but you're right. It probably isn't. But it is important because that's what you want to talk about. You do want to talk about mental health. It is what we're here for. So, Joe, you can go into what you want, what happened recently or not, doesn't matter. But what does mental health, when we talk about that, man, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, well, and first I want to say thank you. And I think I thanked you, and that's why we're here, right? Is you're constantly putting it out there. And it's not just our industry, and I'm not going to turn this into a auto industry bash, but being men in the automotive industry, I find myself constantly afraid to put myself out there and just be honest with content, with just interaction. And there's certainly people out there that I consider friends within the industry that I'm more comfortable doing it with, but you just taking that first step, and you just said a moment ago, you're kind of amazed by the amount of people that come to you and this is what they want to talk about. And I think it's just human nature that nobody really says something until someone else says it. And I talk to my wife about that a lot because she, like herself, has her own struggles and battles. And I see it a lot with women too, and I see a lot with moms. You see that mom guilt where everyone's putting this image out there on social media, and when you sit down and you go to a play date or whatever it is, and nobody says, hey, my life's a mess too. It's cool. I'm not what you see out there. Things are hard. I have hard days. And I was sitting here with you right now, Sean. I don't even remember what was going on last week when I said, hey, I can't do this today. It's too much. And I don't even know. And it's, I got 3 kids, 5, 9, and 10. I'm running a business. My wife's a teacher at a local high school, and everyone's got their stuff. So I don't need to sit here and go into the true specifics. And it's not a grief or a stress pissing contest, because frankly, it doesn't matter whether it's my problems or your problems. Everyone's having their own experience. And for me, that's kind of where I've gotten to my mental health in my journey on, this planet, frankly, is that everyone is having their own experience, and everyone's kind of the star, if you will, of their own experience. And empathy is awesome, and it's something I always strive for. But at the end of the day, I always come back to this stinking oxygen mask analogy, where it's impossible to give empathy to other people if you don't have empathy for yourself and you're not putting yourself first. And you don't want to sit here and say things have changed and things have gotten harder, and things are always changing, right? And I kind of knew when 2020 was happening, I'm like, this isn't good. This is not good, right? And maybe it's good that it wasn't good, right? It forced a lot of people to deal with shit that they don't normally want to deal with. It forced people to be with themselves a lot, and just that right there is hard. I think a lot of people's mental health struggles is they don't like themselves. Forget loving themselves. They don't even like themselves, and they don't want to be with themselves. And all of a sudden, you don't get to have distractions. You don't get to go have a job. You don't get to go out to dinner. You don't get to do these things. And it probably caused a lot of fracture within homes and marriages, et cetera. But a lot of that stuff probably needed to happen in those people's lives. But I think you're probably seeing some of the fallout from it. And I know I hear, we're not perfect, obviously. We have our struggles as a family. My wife and I have our struggles as a married couple. But when our kids come home with some of the stories of kids in their class, and you get little tidbits from kids, they don't have the full details, but you can really hear some of the stuff that's going on in people's homes. And of course, my wife teaches at one of the local high schools, not the school district we're in, but man, I knew it was gonna be hard, and she knew it was gonna be hard, and she purposely chose the lower income school district instead of the district where we chose to send our kids to. But it's brutal. I mean, these kids aren't even given a chance from day one. So, to say all that, knowing that we are, two people, and try to be a family that pays attention to these things, prioritizes our own emotional well-being and mental health, and knowing the majority of households that doesn't happen, to know what a struggle some of the things over the past few years have been for us being more equipped to handle these things. I can't imagine what's going on in a lot of other people's households that are maybe of a more survival mindset, if you will. So all that in mind, I just sent a text to my wife the other day, and I could dig through and kind of find it here. We just had one of those days, man, where it was just LOL by the end of the day. Our dog ate a giant bag of milk chocolate candy, and then my daughter twisted her ankle at ballet. It's just little stuff, just dumb stuff, but you
Yeah,
just start
yeah.
laughing on a Monday, right? It's
But it
like, oh,
happens, right? When it starts to mount up and it comes together, Joe, that's kind of what we're talking about here. And that you said it a couple of times where people's problems are their problems, right? And it doesn't matter what they are. It doesn't.
yeah,
I don't,
no,
you
it doesn't.
trivial. I don't have kids, right? I don't have kids at all. So you talk about kid problems to me, you talk about empathy, tough to have, right? Because I don't have that
Yeah,
problem. It's not. But what I have empathy for is the overwhelmingness that you're dealing with, the life
yeah,
aspect of it, right? Guys who work for us have kids. It's something I'm getting used to. It's something I'm trying to be like, all right, cool. When I worked at dealerships, I was a complete asshole. All right. This was
yeah,
15 years ago. You had a kid, bro. That's your problem, not mine. Get back to
sure,
effing work. Right. And this
sure,
this attitude was so car biz, retail, machismo garbage that sometimes I wish I could go back and do it, but I'm not a regrets guy because they don't serve me in any way. So
yeah,
I don't regret any of my actions because they all taught me and helped me learn and become who I am. But Joe, you said it, man. Empathy, taking care of ourselves, right? The idea of the oxygen mask before others and I wrote it down and circled it. It's a balance of selfishness to take
yeah,
care of yourself, right? Because if you do it too much, the exterior opinion is, oh my God, this guy is in it for himself. He's so about himself. This is ridiculous.
right,
Interior wise, though, Joe, it's like, hey, I, I kind of got to be to do what I do to take care of people and business and run the operation, right?
right.
So it's not just that easy. So yeah, you talk about that. You talk about the relationship between you and your wife. You know, I, I can't imagine, dude, the stresses of running a business, having kids. And the part of having kids that I think would stress me out to no end, and you just lightly touched on it, would be what happens to them.
Yeah,
Dude, come on, man. You remember being in the 6th grade? We didn't have social media. This was just
I
sixth
know.
grade. You were bullied for like maybe lunch period, then you went on about your life, right?
Yeah, I watched your 5 minutes on bullying the other day. It was
Oh
really
yeah,
good.
yeah. Same thing, right? It's just I don't know how you as parents don't always have
So
your fist up ready to punch another parent or another 8-year-old in the face for the way they treat yours. It's tough for me.
right. Well, I
Yep.
think it always comes back to that central theme of control and controlling what you can actually control, which, at the end of the day is nothing. But what you can do is work on your own, and we keep saying mental health, and that's the word that everyone uses for it, but all it really is trying to find some peace and some calm within yourself, because you can't control what happens in your kid's life. And we could talk about the differences, but you relayed very vividly what your experience was. So again, who's to say that to you that was traumatic? So yeah, there's things that go on now, and it's different bullying now. Does that mean it's better or it's worse or it's this or it's that? Those are all just labels to the common human experience. You mentioned empathy, and it being difficult to have empathy for someone who you can't relate to. You can relate to everyone as a flippin' human being, dude. Life is
Agreed.
hard. It's beautiful and it's complex and it's a million different adjectives and things, but at the end of the day, it is not an easy thing to navigate and go through, and everyone's going through something every single day of their lives. So that's something everyone should strive to have empathy for. So I put this at the top of my list, and I didn't used to put this at the top of my list. I started working with a coach, Dr. Eugene Choi. I'm taking a break here. I said, dude, I want to we were at it pretty hard for 3 years straight. And I said, hey, I love you. I want to kind of see what I can do in my own here. We've spent a lot of time together. I want to take a few months and see what that looks like. He said, absolutely, I agree. So what we would just go over and over and over is all this stuff out there, all these external things going on, and you could still always relate it back to some struggle that you're having, how it is related to you and your past and all those limiting beliefs that you've instilled within your head of oh no, this is going to happen, oh no, I'm a bad parent, oh no, I'm a bad business owner, oh no, I'm not making enough money. And then you kind of immediately go into fix mode, and I think that's a big one for parents. And again, it's that I need to control this, I need to make sure that they don't suffer. The biggest thing he did to me is, again, do you like yourself? Do you love yourself? Are you happy to where, yeah, my life's freaking great? So you're sitting here saying, I don't want my kid to struggle and have the same experiences, yet you just admitted that your life's awesome and you love your life and you love where you're at. So would it be a bad thing that your kid went through and went out there and went out into the world, and yeah, not every day was roses and not every year was roses, but at the end of the day, they found their way and they've created their own beautiful life? You really just, you got to let it happen, and you got to focus on how can I be supportive for them. And you can extend this to anything, right? Extend this to your employees, extend this to your friends. Like, I know that the number one most important thing for me every day is to be okay in here in my heart and in my head, and not attached to my thoughts and my insecurities and my fears, because if I'm doing that, I can't help anybody. So I got to help myself first. So I know what you're saying, and there certainly are people that look at it as maybe a selfish venture of self-care or the other buzzwords that you use, but I think that's okay. I mean, you watch Friends at all? Were you a Friends fan?
No, no, my
Okay.
my wife made me watch a clip one time about the pivot piece. As
Pivot's awesome. That's a
yeah,
good
right.
episode.
So no, I had friends who were like
So
crazy obsessed. With that would like whatever night it was on, like everyone would go to someone's house, and I would always be the guy who's like, cool, I'm
I,
gonna go hang out elsewhere.
Friends for me is another macho masculinity thing. I had to eventually, like you're a closet Friends watcher, and then finally I got to the point I'm like, whatever, this show's awesome. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna let
Look, I
everybody
watch
go.
Housewives with my wife. All right, so I
I
feel like
watched
it's the
some
same
stuff.
comparable. All right, it's all
Bachelor started last night. I was in the basement with my wife watching Bachelor after I got home. So But there's an episode where Phoebe is trying to find a truly selfless good deed, right? And she spends the whole episode, and she donates a bunch of money to PBS, and she's like, she hated PBS for some reason, right? And she's like, no, I hate them. I don't like them. I don't like what they're doing over there, but I gave them the money anyway. It was selfless. And somebody's like, well, how'd that make you feel good? She's like, I feel good. And she's like, oh no, there is no selfless good deed. It's all about filling your own bucket, and that's okay. It's okay to make your experience in your life the best it can possibly be, because what happens from there, everything else falls into line. You inspire people, you support people, you spread that out there. If everybody would just take care of their own shit and focus on themselves, we'd be in a freaking utopia. But some people have just drifted so far and gotten so off track and spend so much of their life in survival mode. It's hard to come back from that after 30 years of programming your brain and
It
and
is,
your
and if there's nothing to along the way, right? There's no work put in, right? You mentioned the coach, the doctor. I don't know if that, if that's your version of, I don't want to say therapy. I'm a therapy guy. I've been going to therapy my whole life, right? So that's how I go and I deal. And I remember people being like, "Oh, therapy, like what's wrong with you?" Like, well,
That's a tough one, right? Yeah.
plenty's wrong with me, dude. I'm an addict of everything. Okay, my blood is addicted to everything it can find. I know this about myself. It takes serious work to fend off addiction if you let it control you. And
Yeah.
I have not let addiction control me in almost 25 years,
That's
because I
awesome.
realized in the first 16 to 17 years of my life, this was going to be the path, dude. You
Yeah. I
liked how
can't
that
do a
made
little
you
bit of
feel,
anything, right?
right? You grew up around alcohol. There was my dad was an alcoholic. He's sober now 35 years, whatever it is.
That's
But
awesome. Mine too.
yeah, it's awesome. I love him for it, And when I went to go find sobriety, that's the guy I went to, because I want, and hey, why is this that I got to worry about this? Like I don't think I have a problem. And he's like, neither did I. Okay, and here's how it
Yeah.
goes. What it breaks down to. And then he and I were both sober. My first time being sober at a family wedding as an adult, and he was sober. And we're standing in the middle of this wedding. People are at a wedding.
Yeah.
My dad and I are holding Harp non-alcoholic beers, We're
Yeah.
standing in the middle of this thing, and I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me, and he goes, "Look at these idiots." He goes, "Look around, just take 5 seconds. Look at these idiots." He goes, "The worst part about these idiots is tomorrow morning they won't remember they were idiots." He's like,
Right.
"But you will, and you will remember it, and you will say something, and you will have all the humor that they don't, and all these other things." And I thought, all right, cool. But then after I did the sobriety thing, I went back to him and I said, "Dad, here's my problem, right? Like, I like to go out and have a cocktail, friends, casually, have a drink, have 2 drinks, get a buzz, go
Yeah.
to bed. Like that, I like
Yeah.
it." He looked me straight in the face. He goes, "That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard."
Hmm.
I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You buy a 30 pack, you drink a 30 pack, you black out, you go to bed, you wake up tomorrow, you do it again."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Nah, Dad, I want to be able to, I can have a drink, I can have 2." He goes, "If you can really do it, you should go do it. But the second
Yeah.
that hits, I'd have to have 29 more behind it.
Yeah.
One drink." And then ever since then, I've been fine. Now, granted, I got to that place of sobriety because my then girlfriend, now wife, gave me the ultimatum. She had never been
Yeah.
around drinking. She'd never been around booze. And she's like, "Look, I don't know what that was last night, but if I ever see that again, I'm out.
Right.
I'm out. Like, I just met you, we're hanging out, but I will never do this again." And I stopped. I
Right.
stopped. I didn't go through some long, you have to, Joe, if you want to quit something, you got to have a reason. Okay.
Yeah.
And quitting isn't the reason. That it isn't. That's why you fail. You have to have something larger than I want to get rid of something. So
Yeah. Well, and you usually have to find the background, and I'm sure that's been, a part of your journey with therapy. And yes, working with the coach is kind of my version of therapy. And I've been to tons of therapists. My wife gets a lot out of therapy. It's about finding what works for you, right? I mean, it's all just stepping outside yourself and having somebody objectively view what's going on in here. This shit gets really cloudy and messy, dude. Like, it's not, you can't really go in there because you just get lost. So you do need someone that can step outside and point you in the right direction.
you need a
But
Sherpa, man. You need a Sherpa. You'd never try and go up the
absolutely.
Himalayas by yourself. You shouldn't go rooting around your own brain by yourself. It can get weird and dirty. You
Right.
lock a lot of shit away. You don't think about things. Plus, you already said it. You're not objective, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
if you broke your thumb and you need to put it back in your own place, you probably wouldn't do it on your own because you probably couldn't endure that kind of pain. But the second
Yeah.
you walk to the doctor and he snaps it, it's over. We're done. Hey,
Right.
someone else did it, right? So
Right.
Joe, with you, with your journey through therapists, through coaches,
Yeah.
what was your catalyst? What made you
Mm.
begin the journey of let Joe work on his mind, get into that side of his body? When did that
Oh
happen?
man, so I've had a few. It's funny, and I'm sure as someone who struggles with addiction, you know this. You rebirth like multiple times, and I can think of 5 different iterations myself. And we could sit here. Honestly, I think part of the reason I don't work with a therapist right now or stray away from it is because it's hard to find a good one that you like. I've found, and it takes a lot to spill the story of your life to somebody because I can't. I can jump in and I'll mention a few that are at the front of my brain right
You
now.
can get into the highlights. You can get into
Right, right,
to
but
the
it's
sizzle
tough to
reel of
go
life.
and tell
But
your whole life story to someone, get 2 months in and be like, man, I don't want to work with this therapist anymore. I got to start over. So it's tough.
yes, no, I know, and I've kept mine for 4 years because of it. Because right
Yeah,
away when I
4 years
first
is a
met her,
good
she was
run.
like, "Look, your shit is your shit. You got to get better." And it was like, okay, that's the same reason I love my wife. When I first met her, I had hung up with a girlfriend I was dating at the time. I hung up the phone. I looked at her, and she's like, "You're miserable in that relationship," and I'm like, "What? I just met this girl. Who is this girl to tell me
Wow,
my life?" Right? But that honesty, I crave the honesty, dude. I
that's a
crave
good therapist. Yeah,
it. It is right, but I crave the honesty, and I think most people think they do,
yeah.
but then they hear it and they no
No,
longer crave
I,
it. But
I
I,
we struggle to keep friends and kind of land in friend groups because of the honesty thing. Because I am fucking weird, dude. I'm a weird guy. Like and I don't think I'm weird, right? Because I'm really just being honest, and I get weird when I'm around people who can't be honest themselves or get uncomfortable with stuff. So you talk about therapy, and I'll go back to kind of the things that led me down this path. But you'd mentioned people get weird when you talk about therapy. Meditation is the foundation of all this for me. And man, I don't know. There's a small handful of adult males in my life, in my circle, that I even talk about it with. In the times that I have, I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to mention that to you again because you just don't get it and you don't want to feel better about yourself or your life. So let me know if you ever do, though, because I'm over here doing pretty fucking good and you're
but Joe,
struggling
that's
every
what you
day.
talk about,
So
man. That's what you talk about, the circles of people, right? And how
yeah,
tough it can be to fit in when
yeah,
you called yourself weird. I
yeah.
call myself weird. I say I'm probably on some spectrum of autism, somewhere
For
in the
sure, me
highest of
too. Yeah,
functioning levels. And I don't want to people, I'm not here reducing myself to that's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying
yeah.
is somewhere on this gigantic spectrum of life now, I am on the weird side, the what's wrong? Is this kid think he's
Spectrum
rain
of life. I love that, dude. I
right?
love that.
But what is it makes us weird? Because we can be honest and talk. How does that make us weird? You know what I'm
Honesty. And
saying?
my wife struggled yesterday. It was one of those days where it was like she struggles with self-confidence, and it always comes back to childhood stuff. And that's kind of where my coach took me, like physically took me. We
Yeah,
had
yeah.
one just snap session where he took me into the room from the worst childhood memory I could think of my parents splitting up, and I had to be there with myself, and it broke me down. But so she's struggling with, well, how am I crazy then? Because all these people in my life keep, like, it seems sane to me, I'm being honest, and it's creating conflict. I'm like, you gotta, if you're gonna be honest, you're gonna have conflict. You're going to have, you can sit there and just listen to bullshit and let it go through, and not try to change someone that you care about's, point of view, or you could speak your mind and be prepared for them to not like what you have to say. Like those
And
are
that
those
goes
are
for
the
everyone.
choices.
We've been talking about friends, but if this is a family thing, look, I say it all the time.
Family for sure.
I didn't have choice in my family. I didn't. I was born into it. We share a bloodline, but sharing a bloodline does not guarantee you a spot in line all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah. It's a
Okay,
tough one.
you
I
can't
agree.
just treat me shitty because we're family.
I know.
I'm 40 something years old. I don't. I want what I want. If you don't
Yeah.
want to do it, it's cool. High five. I would hate to think that we would never speak again, but I'm not going to let you be shitty just because we share blood that
I
I didn't.
know. Well, Christina and I struggle with that as well too, and I've helped her with that. I don't have a huge extended family. We just never kind of got into that. I had an aunt that passed away I was close with. But people on my dad's side I'm not really close with. She's real close with her family and has been since the day we met. And I was like, oh shit, you spend a lot of time with your family, but there's a lot of dysfunction within her family, and she would wear it. And I'm like, we're, like you said, we're 40. Well, she's not. I'm 40. We have kids. I need to focus on this shit. We need to do what we want to do and experience our life the way we want to experience it. If they want to come along for the ride and be a part of it, that's cool. But you cannot let that stuff be your stuff, because it will absolutely ruin your life. Absolutely.
Well, like you talked about, that's still what she deals with today when she has self-confidence. She has this, right? And people think all the time, like, Sean, you're so outgoing, you're so this, you're so that. Like, what does it matter? It's what you see, right? It's this whole idea that just because I like talking to people means I want to hang out with them and be around them all day. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Just
No.
because I can do it doesn't mean I prefer it. Anyone
The-
knows anything about me, I like to be out in the woods with my wife and my dog
That's all. Yeah, that's the way
and
to
be left
go, dude.
alone. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? That's my life.
The extroverted introvert. I've become that person too. I never saw it coming. I mean, I was a really shy kid, and a lot of it is our industry, right? I think you get into sales, you work at a dealership, you work in the auto industry, and it's like, I can talk, man, and I can find common ground with anybody, and she'll see me do it. It's funny because we ended up with the friend group, and she met all the women first. And you're like, oh man, I got to hang out with these dudes. Then I'm like, oh, I fucking love these guys. These guys are cool. I can talk to you about this, you about this, you about this. So yeah, I can talk. But at the end of the day, I've gotten to a place where and it's not even a matter of prefer. I'm comfortable being with myself, or just being with my wife, or just being sitting here with my dog next to me. It's like, that was big for me. But
Yeah.
If you want to go all the way back here, and I'll try to be quick with it, or as quick as I can, because like I said, it does go back to childhood. It always does, right? So I was a really skinny kid, athletic, but I was a nice person. I was sensitive, really sensitive. My dad left when I was in kindergarten, 5 or so, raised by my mom, 2 older sisters. I have a younger brother, but very strong feminine female presence in my life. So I was just always kind of more emotional. It just was, which doesn't work when you're a kid, especially in the 80s, for all the cyberbullying and things that go on now. It's like, shit, man, you either played sports or you were a nerd when we were growing up. It was as simple as that. There was no gray area, right? So I got along that way. But as I got into junior high and high school, I smoked a lot of pot. I did a lot of drugs. I went that direction. I was self-medicating, and I just, all of a sudden, I didn't fit in anymore. So flash forward, and I found weightlifting in college. I went way down that rabbit hole. So now it's steroids and it's bodybuilding, and I was fucking big. Like, I was big, right? And that was my identity. So now I'm this person. Joe's this, right? And I lived that for a while. 7 years ago, last week, I was getting a echocardio. I have mitral valve prolapse, which is just a minor thing that like 50% of the male population has. They found that I had an enlarged aorta. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell that means, right? So I start looking it up, and I'm like, well, shit, this is pretty serious. I could die. I go to a cardiologist. I actually went to the Cleveland Clinic, which is where I still go for this. And it's one of those weird disorders where they just watch it, and, if it gets to a certain size, yeah, I'll have to have open heart surgery. And yeah, there's a 1% chance I can die during that open heart surgery. The one living stipulation is you cannot lift heavy weights. You cannot Valsalva. You can't brace. So aside from having a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old at the time, and the business and everything else, and having to confront my mortality and, wow, I could just die, I had to stop. I could not, who I had been for 12 years that had helped me build an identity and overcome some of these confidence issues, and I'm not skinny anymore. And there's good and bad things with weight training and going down that road, but I had built up some nasty body dysmorphia. So again, the addiction thing, right? Like that was my addiction. I did not do healthy weightlifting and diet. It was, I'm not putting anything bad in my body. I'm going to be at the gym 5-6 days a week. This is what I do now. That was taken from
except for the steroids, right, Joe?
Yes, right, right.
So, I always say this to that, a conversation with a buddy many years ago where he was like, dude, I don't put anything bad in my body. I'm like,
except for poison.
Except for the stuff you put in your ass, right? Like, no big deal. I don't want to like make a big deal out of it, but like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, that's not what I'm talking about food. I'm like, okay, so let's draw We draw weird distinctions when we need to
Right.
make it our own
And
version.
that's the industry, man. There's no real all natural bodybuilding going on out there, despite what people
No.
might say. I'm sure there is, but it's
Well, I
not.
mean,
It's
yeah, I
few and
don't
far
bodybuild.
between.
I have a gym in my basement where I lift some weights, and
Yeah.
I call it good just so I don't get fat. I'm not trying to get
Right.
big. I just am trying to not be fat.
Right, which is where I landed with it too. But so that was taken from me. So I tried. I'm like, all right, well, I got to find something. I got to find some peace of mind because I had massive anxiety and panic issues for 2 years after that. Right. It was, what am I going to do? It was, I
Because your
could
kids are
die.
young, Joe, right? I mean, you said this a while ago.
Yeah, so I'd have been, early 30s, and
Yeah.
young kids, and I mean, I have vivid memories of that day, my dad being with me in my kitchen, and I'm hyperventilating, and the day I found out, that because it had to be confirmed, so they went and did a CAT scan to confirm the size of my aorta and where I'm at on the kind of the spectrum, if you will, of you're here, if you get to here, you have to have the open heart surgery, and I'd never been confronted with your mid 30s, early 30s. You're not thinking of dying, and all of a sudden, when you realize that you are going to die, and then it can be a lot sooner than you thought, shit gets real, and all the little stuff starts drifting away pretty fucking quick. I don't care about that stuff anymore. It just goes away. But I knew I needed to change, and it wasn't just changing my activities. I just needed to change. Period. I had to start over. So I did Tai Chi, which is awesome, but then this all really started for me with a dorky little group meditation class at our local library. And I mean, I went and it was a hodgepodge. It was mostly older people, like significantly older people, but I meditated and I'm like, well, that was unique. And I know again, meditation carries the stigma of the trance and the all this, that. And I'm at the point where I don't even call it meditating. It's just sitting. Like all I'm freaking doing is sitting on the floor and I'm closing my eyes. And from there it can take on whatever form and you have your own experience. And yeah, it to flex that muscle and to be able to observe your thoughts instead of connect to your thoughts and observe your emotions instead of connect to your emotions is a muscle that you have to flex. And it takes time, especially after being addicted to those same emotions for your entire life and that becoming your identity of I'm this, I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm angry, right? And it's not I'm feeling angry, it's I'm angry. That's who I am. So I went to this meditation class and it just kind of snowballed from there, man. I found this app Insight Timer and I've found some guides in there that are just amazing human beings. And these are people that I've never met, I probably never will meet, but I love these people and they've had a profound impact on my life and in the amount of peace that I bring into my life. And it's still a daily, challenge, if you will, daily work. I think that's one of the big problems with any of these things, meditation, therapy, mental health. If people just look at it, and this is kind of the Western medicine thing, right? I'll take this pill and I'll feel better. But you can transfer that into any of these things that we're talking about. I'll go to therapy and then I'm good, right? I'll just go for a couple months and then everything's going to be okay. It's like,
Dude, you got to put in
that's
the
not how it
work,
works.
man. You have to put in the work. There is no silver bullet to fixing shit.
Yeah.
Okay, it comes down to consistency,
Yeah.
right? That's why you can do meditation. You get into it because you've been consistent with it. You get it. See,
Yeah.
I'm not there yet with meditation. I still just sleep, Joe.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my problem. I try
That's
to
the
get in.
conversation I had with my friends when I mentioned, they're like, man, if I'm getting up an hour early, it's just because I'm going to go back to bed.
That's
I'll
not,
just
I don't mean
sleep
that. No, I mean like I try to meditate and like you
and fall
close your
asleep.
eyes. I'm in a quiet place and all you hear is me snoring. Like my wife
Yeah.
and I, she takes me to a sound bath. I'm like, all right, let's do the sound bath thing. And I'm laying there and I'm like, man, these noises are so cool. This is so great. 30 minutes later, I'm awoken by
Yeah.
myself snoring, And so
Yeah.
and we're in like a group setting. Luckily, I think it was just the two of us. But the point is that like I get why people do it. My wife does it routinely and she's into it. You can see how she comes up, she kind of comes in afterwards and she's just different. She's dealt
Shoulders
with,
drop.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. So it's something that does take practice though. I like how you say it's a
Yeah.
muscle you have to flex.
Yep.
And the idea of being able to observe myself. Now, I am as I said to you, I'm an addict and I know how to manage every single one of my addictions. So I have them all, whether it's gambling, whether it's drugs, whether it is. So my problem with meditation is that routinely, if I've ever tried to open my mind in my past, it's what I've used mind expanding drugs for, Joe. If I'm going to be honest with
Sure.
you, we're going to talk about this, right? So
Sure.
I'm a guy who I will go take mushrooms, I will go take a hit of LSD, and I will be by myself for 6, 8, 10 hours, and I will solve the world's problems. Okay,
Yeah.
I will, but it's something that people say, oh, you use drugs to like self medicate, right? Well, no, I use drugs to expand my mind, to open them, because I'm using drugs. Drugs are not using me. And
Yeah. And that's legit.
the massive level of addiction.
And I've been afraid to go back to that. Did you watch the documentary series on Netflix?
No, dude, because I haven't. I was going to.
It's good. You should watch it. It's good.
I was going to, and then I like. So I have this I have this problem with subculture of anything.
Yeah.
Like things that I like to do. Like I like to go on my bike, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I'm not a cyclist. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I like to do. I'm a bowler. I like to go bowling, but I am not hardcore. I don't have hand shit.
Bowling's
I don't
great.
have 17 balls. It annoys me. So my concern with getting in now that microdosing and being in the world is so, we're all doing it. Everyone's using ketamine, and the CEOs are so smart because they use it. I've been doing this shit for like 20 years. So I don't, I kind of get jaded a little bit about. I haven't watched it because I'm afraid that it will change.
So it's not, it actually addresses that. I would watch that because it's
All
not
right.
about microdosing, and they talk about that exact thing in the Native American population because
Well, that's where I learned it was in Arizona from guys we had.
yeah.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
they're pissed off that peyote is kind, I mean, that's religious to them. That's their religion, right? I
it
mean, it's
was
very
religion.
serious.
It was done in religion. And if you know the true way that peyote is taken by others' vomit, you would realize how deep in religion it truly is.
Yeah.
It isn't just this idea of take a button and go
Right.
wander. And yeah, dude, I first did it on a reserve in Arizona with some friends
Awesome.
who had been. We were 18 years old in the Arizona desert, and it changed my fucking life forever.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah,
All the
sure.
childhood trauma you talk about, all that stuff, dude. Talk about being confronted. You have no
You
choice.
confront it, and that's what this
Standing in
documentary
front
is
of you, bro.
about, right?
Live, dude, right? You smoke weed. Weed does not create something in front of you, okay?
Right.
Even mushrooms just take and give you trailers, and they don't put a different reality in front of you.
Right.
Ayahuasca is these things. This puts a different reality in front of you, and it's something you're confronted.
That's what I hear. Yeah.
And it's fucking crazy. And you
Well, and see, so I've been, because I did drugs recreationally, I've been scared to go back to that, right? Because I see like if you watch this documentary, I mean, they have people with massive traumas, past traumas in their life.
PTSD, dude, military guys, the whole 9 yards. Those are the guys who need this therapy, man.
Right. So they put them in this nice, comfortable room with their therapist. They're monitored in the room. There's candles. They're in a bed, and they give them the drug, and then they gently bring it out. But they don't even have to coax the person because that's what their brain, their subconscious wants to talk about these things finally. And now it's out, and they are changed afterwards. And it's not something where it's not microdosing where you have to I did it once, and like you said, shit changed. Like, yeah. I'm good now. I could go do another session if I want to get back in there and bring some other stuff out, but I'm good.
Yeah, it's really how we're utilizing ketamine now. And again, Special K is something we grew up with, a street drug in
right.
90s, 2000s. Now it's
right.
being given out by hospitals, by doctors locally. I live in a state that doesn't even have legal cannabis, but I could walk into a doctor and get ketamine.
Sure.
We can talk about how weird that is, but the point is that if we look at drugs through an addiction lens, through a drug problem lens, then you won't see therapeutic value, right? But if you look at therapeutic value before it's a drug, then it's different, right? And that's how I've always used drugs. I started smoking marijuana just because I had migraines, and they had me on like $1,100 a month medication that were giving me ulcers. And so I had to find a different route. I found a different route. Yeah, it just so happened I'd already loved the Grateful Dead. I'd already loved what I loved. And so then it was like, oh, the useless hippie who smokes weed and doesn't have anything. Dude, I've been making 6 figures since I was 19 years old.
Right.
So I don't need to hear about how I'm lazy and I don't give a shit or anything. Fuck all that noise.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the therapy. Let's talk about what it can do for people, Joe. So stigma is what I come back to when I talk about drugs, when I talk about mental health, when I talk about pretty much being a car guy is covered in stigma and always has been. Joe, how do you approach stereotypes and sort of this idea? Like, you're a parent, right?
Yeah.
You have kids. I'm interested. How are you talking to your kids today about those things? About now that drugs are becoming more mainstream, more legal. You have documentaries on Netflix about how to use mushrooms. What does this sound like? Because when we were kids, it was like, hey, the DARE program, you're going to jail. It's a gateway. Your life is over.
I forgot about the DARE program.
What does this all sound like now as an adult?
You know what's funny? Everyone says it in a joking manner. All and God bless the DARE program. I know they were well intentioned, but all it really did was like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so
I'm
many
gonna
people don't
bookmark that in my subconscious. That sounds like something I might want to look into later on in
I
life.
wasn't even thinking about it, but you told me not
Right.
to. It's a thing I've learned from my wife is don't tell her not to do something because then she's
Yeah,
like, well,
they
why?
definitely did that. Yeah,
What's
they
the
did that.
yeah. The
Yeah.
DARE program. Cool t-shirts. Again, I love the color scheme, right? I stuck with
Yeah,
it my
right.
whole life. I built a business on it, but at the end of the day, pretty useless fucking program.
Ah,
The opposite of what you'd hope.
I had totally forgot about it till you said it. All right,
All right, so how are we talking to kids about this
here's
kind
where
of
we're at. And man, I'm too honest sometimes, and not, and I'll get into kind of the drugs and alcohol type stuff here, but it's tough because we're in a good school district, and you know, everybody wants to talk about liberal agenda in school, and there's undertones of it, but you know, whatever. I don't care about that. If you're not parenting your child properly, or a part of their life, or you know, present in their life to the point that they can go to school and be told or hear something in passing from a teacher, and that's going to affect them and change their thought process or their way that they're living their life, then you're not doing your fucking job at home.
We
That's
gotta
your
look
responsibility.
backwards. You know what I mean? Like this past week, my Packers lost to the Niners. Right? Everyone wants to blame the poor kicker. Sorry, we made like 16 mistakes before we got to the poor kicker.
Right, it should never
So,
come down to that, ever, ever. It's
right,
always
and
true
none of
for a
that.
kicker.
It
That's a
shouldn't
brutal
matter.
job.
You should have
Right.
done your job leading up to it. You wouldn't have to worry about that job being complete.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
interesting.
but having said that, I'm really honest, and a lot of times, again, there's some shitty parents out there, and they're creating some shitty kids, and God bless them. I love them, and hopefully they find their way. But I've determined that I'm not gonna let that affect my children. So I try, you know, my daughter, my oldest is 10, and she comes to me for meditating. Now she's like, Daddy, can we do a meditation? So we'll sit down. And she's gotten good to the point, because you mentioned group meditation. That is hard for me because it is an individual experience for me, but I want to give this to her. So now we're to the point where we can do a 15, 20-minute meditation, and I forget she's there. I go away, and it just flies by. So that's how I know it's real, and she's getting something out of it. I can feel that she's actually in it and she's there with me. So we're just now getting to the point where I can kind of instill some of these same things in them that I have in myself, as far as those big issues. Probably going to come up here in the next few years. Definitely going to come up here in the next few years. They're still pretty, you know, if you want to call it innocent, naive, whatever. I'm sure we're going to go down that road eventually. They see us drink. We drink casually from time to time. I again, like you said, we don't tell them you're never going to do this. Alcohol bad. It's like I don't like putting a label on anything like that. I do tell them, look, in a perfect world, I wouldn't have to drink. It's not the most awesome thing in the world. I don't want you guys to think that woohoo alcohol, because I do think that message needs to get out there. And frankly, between me and you, we're sitting here, we're talking about drugs, we're talking about marijuana. I think alcohol sucks, man. I've gotten to the point, and I still have beers, but I'm to the point now, like the past 2 months, and I love beer. I love craft beer. I love sours. I just enjoy beer, right? I do. But I'll have one, and I'm like, this sucks. Why did I do
Dude,
that?
I,
Like,
I
I'm
stopped drinking
tired.
beer
I have
like
a headache. I don't
yeah, I
feel
stopped drinking beer
good.
like
Why did I
8 years
do
ago.
that?
Yeah.
Regret it. Most times I regret it, right? So I am getting to that age where I'm like,
I've
I
never
don't
regretted
wanna
smoking
do
a joint and going to bed, bro. It's never
right,
I've never
dude. I
woken up
know.
feeling any different. For
I
sure.
know. It's like there's better ways to do this.
And that's why I think there's also a big Joe. There's also a huge push in cannabis right now for beverages, because I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of push from beer. You know, we
Yeah.
got some guys in the car industry who have launched like alcohol-less beer, right? I mean, you know, just go drink more water. But the point is
Yeah.
that everybody is trying to find a way to, because look, man, at the end of the day, we all want to be able to take the edge off. Okay, Whether
Yeah.
it's meditation, whether it's a joint, whether it's a beer, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Everyone is looking to take the edge off of their day.
Yeah.
I don't see a problem with it. I
Yeah.
don't, if you can manage it. Now, when drugs or alcohol ruin a family, ruin a life, I get it. It is terrible. But there's a lot of decisions being made within that to get there. It
Yeah.
isn't just, it's easy to
It's
blame the drugs, blame the booze, but there's a user involved.
so, and that's, I guess that's what I'm kind of saying with my kids is where if I'm taking care of myself, like we said, and my wife's taking care of herself, and they see that, and they see that we're living our best lives and we're healthy, emotional human beings, and now that's how they choose to live their lives, and they love themselves, and again, and this is nothing against my parents. It's a generational thing, right? You
Mhm.
reach a point of empathy with your parents. I remember calling my dad after going through one of my initial sessions with Eugene and just crying, and I'm like, "Dad, I just wanna tell you I love you and it's okay." And I don't know that he'd ever heard that because he started crying. He got choked up, like, I'm sure he didn't expect that because he's carried so much guilt his entire life from the mistakes that he's made. So I give my parents that grace. Everyone's a human being. They did the best they could. They lived their journey, and you try to do a little better, right? And I can see it in art because our kids blow my freaking mind. Our middle child is like the rock of our family. Like she gives me a hug and supports me when I'm crying and I'm struggling and it's okay, daddy. It's okay. And rubbing me on the back. She's 9 years old, dude. It's like this kid is just an emotional and mental rock already. So I know we're doing a little better, but we're trying to have that confidence that if we're helping them and supporting them the way we can and teaching them the lessons that we've learned from the struggles that we've had in our lives, those things won't be a problem because there'll be healthy outlets like you just said, or they'll be treated and respected, the way they should be and used the way they should be. And it won't be, I'm doing this because I'm drinking because I feel bad about myself.
Right.
I'm using this drug to get away from my awful, stressful life. So I'm assuming those things will handle themselves. Are there some dangers out there and things that they need to know and some education as far as pharmaceuticals and things being passed around at a party? Sure. And we'll have those conversations when the times come. But again, I'm looking more at the inner being and who they are and how they feel about themselves and making sure that that's in line and everything else tends to fall from there.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, man, if you can have your kids raised that way and you do, like my dad always used to say to me, the outcome's the outcome. As long as you can look yourself in the mirror and know you gave it your best,
Yeah.
that's really what you should take home from you. And people would always say, oh, that's so lame, so cheesy, but it's right. It is right that if I can do that, I can feel good about it. I can know that I did my best. And I think that comes down to, as you said earlier, controlling the controllable.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that when running I think you can attest to this. That's the hardest part, man, is
Yeah.
controlling the
It is.
controllable, right? We have people who work for us, work with us, and you see them make a step to the right, and you're like, ooh, I wouldn't have gone right. I would have gone left, and shit. And then they go right, and they find out why you would have gone left, and they end up wanting to go left. And you're like, well, next time, let's talk about it. Let's talk through it. But people by nature are independent. We
Yeah.
want to do it ourselves, right? I mean, I just
Yeah.
said it to you about why I won't watch a mushroom documentary because I don't want them to ruin how I use mushrooms or what I
Yeah.
view or how I look at it. And you're like, hey, it could be a supplement, it could be something different. But immediately I'm like, I don't need it clouding me. And I've learned that throughout my life that I don't do the coach thing. I do the therapy thing, but like business coaches, right? Someone once a while ago was like, you need a business coach. And I was like, what? And they go, well, I'll help you run your business, help you do this, help you do that. I'm like, business runs. Like I get concerned, Joe. Sometimes I have too many voices in the head, right? Too
Yeah.
many things trying to tell me what direction to run when I feel confident in myself enough that I know the direction I want to run.
Yeah, and that's why I've struggled to call Eugene a coach, and I really don't, because he's not a coach. I mean, I don't know what you call it. And yeah, he wants to, he wants me to make more money. He wants the company to function well, but again, it always starts with me. And we'd go, I'd say it was 80-20, man. And he'd even try to get into some marketing stuff and things like that. and it would always just come back. We'd steer the conversation organically, it would just come back to me and how I'm doing and how I feel about myself. So
Yeah,
you
I started
mentioned
off
about
with a business therapist that now is it has very little to do with business some days and more to do with personal life. So yes,
right. I mean, that's what it always comes back to, especially when you're at the top. It all stems
yeah,
from you. The success of the business, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, it's going to come from in here and in here and inside me. It's not about I'm doing this and I'm making this move and making this move. And I struggle with that. You want to talk about, you mentioned the control thing. I struggle with the other side of that. And Eugene helped me with that so much of, oh my God, if I'm not controlling this, if I'm not busy, then I'm lazy and I'm not doing enough to help the company. I'm not fixing things. I'm not overcoming this struggle. I mean, and it's so huge for us because well, I mean, we're so dependent on just economic cycles and how the automotive industry is doing, right? At the end of the day, there's so much that you and I don't control. We can do everything right. We can press all the right buttons, but ultimately, what's going to happen out there is going to happen out there. What's happening inside car dealerships is happening inside car dealerships, and we don't have control over that. So for me to let go of that is it's a daily thing. I mean, and
it's
it's good,
hard,
right?
dude.
It's good to have that thrown in your face because now I'm forced to flex that muscle day after day after day of I gotta let go, I gotta let
Yeah,
go,
but
I
you
gotta.
talk about it, and I mean, I love it. I love the fact that it's like, look, there's a lot that goes on. There's a lot of decisions need to be made, and they, I make them, and I need to let other people kind of be involved and make those decisions. And like you talked about as a parent, you kind of got to watch the kid fall for a second, not in a way where you're setting them up to fail, but in a way where they realize that they fell. Maybe they know next time they'll look out for the rock or whatever it is.
Yeah,
And so for us, we all try to live independently within this company, right? I know you do the same thing. I
we
mean, I
do.
know
Yeah, we're all remote. Yeah, I mean, it's
we're all
like everyone
remote.
running their own business,
It
basically. Yeah,
is, but when they use the label, right? The brand, the name, the whatever, but it still comes back to you. So we have to be aware of what they're doing. But my boy Anthony Santangelo, right? I mean, that is, I love me some Ant. The dude runs independent of the business in that way, where
I know.
he's responsible to go out and find it. He's responsible to go out and work it, and that drives him. You
Yeah.
have given someone who may or may not have gone and started their own business the ability to run their own business without a ton of the additional headaches that come with running
Right.
the business.
Well, and it'll Michelle McLean will always come back to me and she'll be like, people think Anthony's the owner of Automax, or Anthony will mention it to me. And like about 5 years ago, it irked me a little bit, and I'd get into it back and forth, and I'm like, dude, I don't care. God bless him. That's great. It's like that's a win. Like I don't have an ego. I don't give a damn if anyone knows me. Care like I'm taking care of my people. I'm taking care of Automax. I'm running the business and doing the things that I know need to be done for us to all thrive, for everybody to live a good life internally. And if he's out there doing his thing and people see him, then it's a win for everyone. So I really don't care.
It really is. And I think that's the point is you let people run independently, you let them do their own thing, but they work for the brand. They
Yeah.
work for they work for as the NFL calls it, I like to call it the shield.
Yeah.
They
Right.
work with us and help us to grow, but we have to be there for them, right? You want to talk
Yeah.
about mental health, you want to talk about being open about stuff. Anthony's one of those guys, man. He's one of those cats that is not afraid. Joe, I love the guy to death. I would never do karaoke. And above that, I would never record myself or
Sure.
have
So
myself recorded.
this
Okay?
karaoke is a big thing for me. So I have a list. I have never done karaoke once, right? Not with our friends, not with anybody. And I love music. I mean, I love music. It's a huge part of my life. I play
I can
guitar.
see the
I don't
guitars. I
sing
mean,
when I
yeah.
play guitar, dude. I can't sing. And I don't mean like I have a bad voice. I don't know because I won't sing. I feel like when I'm by myself, I let it out pretty good. So I have a list of songs in my phone. My wife's like, "Are you serious?" Yep. Of songs that when I finally can cross over here, I want to sing karaoke, right? But yeah, I can't put myself out there. That's
You're gonna
not
have to
easy to
do you're
do.
gonna have to do it with Ant because he clearly knows where to go. He clearly is
He
it's
knows
part of
all the
his travel
spots.
schedule.
That is for sure. Yep,
That
that's
is for
that's
sure.
his
All right,
thing.
man. You've been more than gracious with your time. I like with leaving folks with that last sort who just step one in addressing the mental health journey. What kind of
Yeah.
stands out to you?
Dude, I mean, I'm always going to come back to it. You don't have to call it meditation, and it might not be sitting on a floor with you. So I see you in your trips to the woods. That's meditation, whether you know it or not, Sean.
Yeah.
It's quiet solace. Meditation is finding presence. This always comes back. I'm a big Eckhart Tolle guy. The power of now. All of everyone's problems can be reduced to nothing if you can stay present, and that's that muscle that you're flexing of the business isn't going to die if I go take a hike in the woods for an hour. It's all still there. Everything's still there. The labels, Sean the business owner's still there. Joe the dad is still there. It's not going anywhere, right? You have to find that thing for you. And for me, it is sitting on the floor and closing my eyes and doing a guided meditation and using some of the people that have helped me along the way. But it doesn't have to look like that for you. But I think above all that, and we talked about it, it's honesty. Find a way to have the hard conversations with yourself. And if you need a therapist to bring those hard conversations out, hide it from whoever you need to hide it from for the first 2 months. You'll find pretty soon it's so freaking legit. It's like taking what is in Matrix, the red pill or the blue pill. I don't know which one it
I
is.
think
Where
it's the
you
blue
thought,
one.
yeah, right. So you don't care anymore. You don't give a shit what people think because you're like, wow, that was life changing, and I feel really good, and this is helping me. So you got to find your thing. But I do encourage, just from of what's worked for me standpoint. I use Insight Timer. Dr. Joe Dispenza has been huge for me. Sarah Blondin's been huge for me. There's musicians that just do binaural beats that have been huge for me. But find a way to sit, close your eyes, and spend 10 minutes in absolute silence and see what's there and see what happens, and don't be afraid of it.
Oh, I love it. 10 minutes in silence. Again, people, Joe says it, and I want to be clear about it. Honesty is key, but you have to be prepared for honesty. You have to be prepared for what comes up. You should not take diving into your mind lightly. You should take it's a complex piece. You should
Yeah.
take it very seriously.
So don't expect it to feel good or initially feel good.
No.
Get away from that even label of this feels
Yep.
good, this feels bad. Just it's gonna be a feeling. It's gonna be probably uncomfortable or something you've never felt before or not for a while.
Feel. That's what I tell people. Feel. I mean, I had a therapist many years ago. I had to go through the kind of the sight and sound therapy, right? You hold on to these little bars, and you get all these noises coming in, bro. And all of a sudden, I am fucking brought back to like childhood trauma in a way that made me uncomfortable. That when
That's
I
a
first
great
did
one.
it, I dropped these things and I just opened my eyes and I'm like, fuck this. Don't
Yeah,
ever do this to me again. And she was
yeah,
like, that's how you know it worked. We're going to do it again. You're going to go down this road. And it taught me all these lessons. And it also helped me realize that I had told you about my drug experience at 18. It had helped me realize how that had profoundly affected how I approach my life and what
yeah,
I do with my life and how I can move past pretty significant fucking trauma in my life to not, as I used to call it and still jokingly call it, an Oprah moment where you kind of blame what happened when you were 9 on who you are when you're 40. I don't want to. I want to have it talk about what helped me build. I'm not here to
yeah.
blame. I'm not here to blame parents or blame. I don't. It's not anyone's fault. Your
No,
life happens to you. You must make the best of it, man. So, Joe, you have been absolutely phenomenal today, man. Thank you so much. I
yeah,
hope
thank you.
better, and I think it's a win for both of us.
Absolutely, man. Anytime.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Next week, I'm going to start a little two-part series. It's going to perfectly dovetail off of this. The first part of the series is knowing your individual value. And the week after that will be how to know your product's value. We're going to have a ton of fun. Be sure to join us. Thanks a lot and have yourselves a wonderful week.